In the meantime, Maxine, if you want to speak a little bit about the corporate crime situation and the state of your research so far, so that we can give our participants the opportunity to find their voice.
Okay, maybe I should also show my face for those who can see me. As Vera indicated, one of the approach that we have taken is that we have to recognize that if we're talking about crime, we have to look at crime in all its facets. And typically, when we think of crime in Barbados, because of those horrendous statistics that Verla quoted just now, 35 murders in a place of this size is really devastating for a lot of people impacted by it, and because we are so small. But there's also the need to recognize that there is a mix of other crimes which will impact significantly on the country as well. And one area of crime is what is traditionally has been called white collar crime, and it is sometimes referred to as corporate crime. But in the literature, they also make a distinction between the two, that while they're similar and the impacts are similar, white collar crime is typically seen as crime committed by individuals within the context of organizations, typically for the individual's own benefit. Fraud of various kinds, with theft from the employer, etc. On the other hand, corporate crime is also seen as activity that may occur taken by an individual, let's say a CEO or some person in the organization intending to benefit the organization, such as we talk about tax avoidance, which is legal, tax evasion, which is illegal, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time breaking it down. But the important point is that we need, in looking at crime in Barbados, we need to have a sense of what is the perception, or what are the perceptions of Barbadians within the corporate structure, within the business community and individual citizens, on what exactly is. Just to remind persons, when you join, if you're talking, we are hearing your conversation. So as soon as you join us, please mute, because it also apart from having us eavesdrop on your conversation, it kind of distracts a little bit. So as I was saying, for us really and truly, when I've been assigned that aspect of to do the initial research, one of the things that has become evident is that while people may talk about white collar crime in its many, from petty types of issues of individuals pilfering from organizations to more serious issues, when we're looking at efforts to influence decision making, let's say the private sector influencing government or whatever government decisions, much has not been done empirically to identify what that is. And so in the respect of the work, because when I looked across the Caribbean, while we can see a lot of references and research, empirical research done internationally, we haven't really done much to document, to research, to analyze this kind of crime. And so for us, it is important that, one, we understand what is we get a sense of how people understand it, what people perceive to be the extent to which it exists, the impact that it has on institutions, the consequences of that. So in essence, we believe that this is an area of our efforts at the Commission to really capture, in this case, some baseline information, but also to capture in a holistic way crime, and we have identified that as an important part. Beyond getting an understanding of what it is, the expectation is that through two sets of surveys, we are looking to go through the representative bodies, Employers Confederation, and so on, to seek their support in getting corporations, business, persons in the business sector to respond to some short questionnaires. These will be largely qualitative in the sense that in doing that and having open-ended questions, we really would get from the respondents a proper understanding of their own interpretations of what constitutes white collar crime / corporate crime in Barbados, their sense of the impact that it has, as I said before, the consequences not only on the individual entity that is affected or that is participating, but generally the impact on society. Similarly, we will also have a questionnaire targeting individual citizens to see how they interpret it, to see how they view this in relation to other crimes that we violent crime that we see on robberies, violence leading to murder and so on, to see what people perceive it. And more importantly, as Rolla pointed out, in all that we do, what we are seeking to collect from and to garner from respondents, whether they do surveys or people opt to submit short memos or position something in writing establishing their views, because I would also say that's an option where people can submit their thoughts on the issue. In all of this, we want to move beyond having a discussion or description, but we also want to be in a position to make certain decisions in terms of recommending the way forward in tackling some of these issues. So just to repeat, in relation to that, we when it comes to white collar crime, corporate crime, we recognize that this is very much prevalent, but it is not something that is discussed in the same way, or it does not impact people directly in the same way that a murder almost every other day or at least once a week or whatever, when we see this kind of things. And we hear about the murders, but we also hear and see those people who would have been injured in violent attacks and so on, but who may not die. But similarly, this category of crime that I'm focusing on, I've been assigned, is also impacting on the society in many ways. And we also need to tackle it because it also has a way of doing significant damage at multiple levels, and it is really that understanding that we are seeking. I hope it wasn't too long, Verla, and I hope that it covers. If anybody has any question or comments, they certainly can raise them either in the chat or by raising your hand, and Verla, I believe, will be able to ask you to share your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maxine. So just giving you some context on what we've been doing so far. And I see Basil is on the line. He hasn't presented as yet his research to the commission, and Shakwani, just because Basil is in security, and we are looking at all the different ways that we can have information feeding into our eventual conclusions. Shakwani is our youth representative on the commission, and she is organizing for us in relation to outreach amongst our young people. They are particularly impacted by some of the issues that were raised at our first town hall meeting, and that is with respect to youth unemployment and a phenomenon that we talk less about, and that is youth underemployment. Unemployment doesn't really need any defining, but underemployment is in relation to persons who have certain skill sets, who have qualifications, but cannot find the work that matches with their qualifications, and they take the work that they can get. As a very extreme example, I was aware of a young lady who came home from law school and was working as a cashier because she could not find an attachment in a law firm or law chambers. We also spoke to, on the last occasion, to bring you up to speed, we also spoke to the issue of young men in particular, as a subset of youth, but with peculiarities where they are less visible in the job market than our young ladies are, and recognizing that we have to do some form of outreach in order to get them on board and productive members of our society. Bertie, are you on? I am not seeing your handle. In the meantime, I will speak to the research that we have in relation to policing in Barbados. And when I say Bertie Hines, I think that those of a certain generation will have the humblest of respect for the gentleman in his role as a senior police officer. But since his retirement, he spent his time in research because, like me, he is a qualified criminologist. And unlike me, he's gone as far as publishing 2 books, and there's a 3rd one on the way. He is credited with having implemented successfully community policing in Barbados. And in terms of the community policing, we would recall the outposts in particular that was in the Pine, and how that society calmed down, not just by having a container load of police officers amongst them, but by the officers actively engaging in the community with activities, with outreach, and building back up the trust that obviously had passed. And we find ourselves back in that situation now, and we are also considering whether, alongside the obvious hardline policing that will need to be in place, the softer policing to run alongside it, so that we build back up that trust that once again has been eroded between the police service as it is now known and the citizens whom they serve. The issue comes up regularly, even if only we're looking at the newspaper and the number of times we have persons appearing before the courts for abusing police officers. And we know that we have that as simply an indicator of the thinking and the behavior of society in general, and how we need to have that approach of police officers to change, so that the approach of the citizens to police officers will also change. We're looking to have it go both ways, but we would want, as a representative of organized society, that the initiative move once again from the police. These are some of the initiatives that we are considering putting forward. And I really do want to hear from you what your approaches are. So the floor, you feel free to interrupt me. The floor is open at all times, because we do wish to be tapping into your thinking and what you wish to see achieved outside of the obvious, and that is for the crime rate to come down. But how we get there, what path we take to get there, we really are interested in hearing your contributions.
Verla, I was just gonna, I noted the silence, and I was gonna ask how many from, because I'm looking and I'm, to see how many people have joined us from outside of Barbados. And beyond just indicating that they've joined us, perhaps they can share with us their reaction to coming home, or if not coming home, reading and hearing of the increasing levels of violence. What are their thoughts about that? Perhaps they can, how it makes them feel, what they believe is the cause for that, what they think perhaps can help us as people at home, government policy and beyond that, to address, the concerns that they have developed, having experienced either firsthand or vicariously the changes that we are seeing taking place on the island.
I'm recognizing the hand of, is that Naya H? You can unmute your microphone, please.
Hi, everyone. Please excuse my background. I have a very vibrant toddler here. Just listening to some of the conversations that has been taking place about crime here, and being someone from another Caribbean country, sorry, who decided to stay live and work here in Barbados, it is quite disheartening seeing everything that's taken place and all the young lives that have been lost. And as a mother of a young boy, it kind of hits home, because you never know where you can be or your child can be, and have an unfortunate incident to hear that your child was gunned down simply while playing outside, or gunned down while walking his way to school or something like that. And I think there are quite a lot of interventions that can be taken place. In my short time here in Barbados, I learned about the Princess Trust International Program, and I've seen some of the work that they've been doing. But I think if you have a program that is similar but on a wider scale, it can help. So essentially, Princess Trust have several programs, one of them being the teen program. I'm not sure if persons would have heard about it, but they have been in the media, and they've been doing a lot of PR relative to that. But it's essentially a program for youth who are, as they would call them, at risk, which is a term I don't really like that term, but persons from poorer backgrounds, persons who are, as they would say, at risk. And they put them in a setting where they teach them a lot of soft skills, such as teamwork, building confidence. They have a program that they have the group, the participants work on. It might be helping to renovate a community playground, or it might be raising funds for an initiative. And they also have sessions on preparing for interviews, CV and cover letter writing, business planning, and it essentially is at the gist. If we can find a way to have a program on a larger scale that is similar, maybe we can take some of the young men and even women from off of the streets and help them and steer them down the right path. Apart from the program, something that is also important is the next stage, like what happens after the person does this amazing program. Are they able to assimilate into a job? You might be able to find placements for them within different business places. That may be something that can be explored. So that is just a suggestion that I'm having relative to some of the issues surrounding crime. I'm not going to ramble on, but I just thought I'd share that, and I hope that something might be useful in this discourse.
If I could reply, and thanks a lot. We do have in Barbados that program that you mentioned, and I think it would be useful for us to go back and have a look. And as you said, it'd be valuable to expand the numbers of participants. But I like the point that you raised. After having that experience, what has happened, and perhaps, well, the suggestion I would take from that is that we explore the impact that program has had over the years. And as you mentioned, there's one aspect of that is targeting at-risk youth as the persons are described. And so I will make a note to explore the impact that has had, both from the point of view of the participants, former participants, and those who would have engaged in facilitating the exercise. At the start, where they would have observed the personalities, etc., of the various participants, and observed them before, and also to find out if they themselves have any active follow-up with any of the participants. So I think thanks for sharing that, because I know that from involvement in another program, which is more the entrepreneurial part of the Youth Business Trust, that a number of people have benefited from the training or the exposure, but what does that translate into is the important question.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Quincy, I recognize your hand, but before you speak, I just want to take a moment to welcome the political leader and leader of the opposition, Mr. Ralph Lauren.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening to you and all of the members of the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Quincy.
Verla, I would want to ask Naya if she could message me directly her contact, because I just saw her comment and I would like to touch base with her on having facilitated. So if you can, Naya, message me directly, or I would do that and send you my contact information directly, and we can exchange. I would undertake to discuss your experience with that program.
Good evening, Dr. Pisa, and to the entire panel. When I look at the aspect of crime in Barbados in terms of suggestions that we can help reduce crime, I want to outline two areas that I think that we can improve on. The first area, I am looking at household protection within the community, and that area, some of the crimes that have been occurring in Barbados has been very bold and visual. While persons are outside, while children are playing, while the community is in its active mode. So that first one, I want to offer suggestions in terms of household protection. And then the second aspect, which deals with a more holistic approach in our young people, which is volunteerism, but done at a larger scale. So I'm going to do the first one, household protection, and then the next one, volunteerism at a larger scale. In terms of the household protection, I think that the community have to get involved in terms of purchasing or making houses, or better yet, giving supplies in terms of having cameras for each house. The reason why is that I think that having the technology now attached to what is occurring, one, it can solve the crime, or better yet, place what has occurred in the accident in terms of court. It can also place what has happened, so it can help the police in terms of narrowing down the suspects and stuff. But I think that we need to have persons, we need to find solutions to protect our household or protect our housing for in terms of crime occurring in terms of theft or for those seeing criminal activities that taking place. So one, if we can have a solution in terms of have a mandatory that persons put cameras in their households to not to peep at persons but to protect their property. Two, have in terms of household protection, how you can have security alarms in the house in terms of windows and stuff. I think if we do it more mandatory, like how we push for solar panels or if we push for water pumps, I think we need to push for more security protection among the household and also to have security cameras in the community as well. I know that it might be a cost or fund government and might be a cost on the individual households, but I think if we find some means of balance in terms of government and household, in terms of cost, we can help reduce, or not better yet, reduce crime, but better yet, protect the household of their belongings and their property. That is one solution. And the second solution is volunteerism. In China, they do volunteerism in a program called the volunteerism program, and they do it from youth straight up to adult. In Barbados, we have seen snippets of it where at University of the West Indies, where volunteer hours is being done. I think what needs to be done is that whole volunteerism or give back hours or program that we already have is that it needs a little bit overhaul, where we start volunteerism from youth in terms of primary schools, from the time the child joins the Girl Guides or the Scouts or Pathfinders or 4-H Club. Now, all of those hours, both primary, secondary, and tertiary, are added up as a proper program in terms of volunteerism. I think that if we get volunteerism involved and make that children are mandatory to join what's called at least one extracurricular activity, whether within the school or outside the school in terms of karate or a different aspect. I think once we get children participating in doing healthy, positive, disciplinary organizations that have been existing and giving the boost towards making it mandatory, and do a whole holistic now of volunteerism from the primary or better nursery and go straight to tertiary. I think that will have a greater impact because persons who pass through like cadets and different organizations have a stronger disciplinary perspective. I'm not saying that they can't commit crime, but they have a more understanding of structure, they have more understanding of the right and wrong, and that to me will help the society, especially our young people, if we have a proper program put in place. We already have aspects of it, but if we put it together and make that children are mandatory doing extracurricular activity by using volunteer hours from primary up and investing in the different organizations that there are existing here now, I think that can be another way of offering solutions. So that is my solutions in terms of volunteerism and household protection. I thank you very much for the piece.
Thank you. Before you move, Quincy, I have a question to throw back at you in relation to your first recommendation. You speak of security cameras in homes and in the community, and you speak about essentially as a policy position. Have you addressed your mind to the collision that would have with privacy issues?
I know that it will be a very ticklish one in terms of confidentiality and privacy. And I hope that if we find a balance, both policy wise or legally wise, that it can be done, or if not, at least have cameras on the streets of the communities. But I think that cameras do, or technology, do offer a breakdown of what has occurred in the situation or the activity, and it can also help identify the criminals that are participating in them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I recognize the hand of Stephen Strickland. Mr. Strickland, are you still there? Okay, I recognize the hand of Dwayne Goddard.
Good evening to everyone online on the meeting, and good evening, especially good evening to the members of the commission. I too, like Quincy, I just wanted to share some thoughts out of running around in my mind for a little while now in terms of addressing some of the issues that we face in terms of criminal activity and stuff. As a teacher and as a member of a secondary school board for over 10 years, one of my pet peeves is that I find that rather than deal with problems, we tend to solve problems from one institution to the next. And I think that in Barbados especially, we have enough teachers with a military background to institute a living boot camp style school for deviant students. Now, if we look into the schools now, we can almost determine or we can almost see a vision of what our society will look like later if we look into some of what is going on in the schools.
Yeah. Mr. Strickland, we'll come back to you in a moment. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yes, please, sorry. So my thing is that actually we had things like the home in St. Lucie, can't remember the name of it, at the Nichols Center. Then there was one at Edison, the New Horizon.
New Horizon.
But I find that one of the things, one of the problems that I was faced with these institutions is that too many times it was left up to choice. In that parents could decide if the students go or not. And we find that sometimes like when you expel children, then some of them are home doing nothing, and there's no way to try to mitigate the issues and try to fix some of the problems that they would have been experiencing or what drove them to that in the first place. I saw in another Caribbean territory, I think it's Bahamas, I saw recently that they have a very strict, military-led boot camp style sort of situation going on, and it's something that I feel could do a little bit of mitigating here in Barbados in terms of dealing, because a lot of the problems that Marita said.
I wanted to take the picture from you.
Go ahead.
A lot of the problems that we face are because that we don't make the problem in the bud when we see them in the schools. And as early as primary, because it's getting worse and that we're not just seeing it in secondary, we've seen a lot of deviant behavior in the primary schools as well. So that's something that I would like to probably, if there's some sort of research to be done on that, to see the impact that type of boot camps or living situation, because again, one of the things that I realize when I sit on the board and dealing with disciplinary matters is that a lot of times, a lot of problems that students bring into school have a genesis in the home and a lack of parental involvement, a lack of something. So sometimes it is necessary for children to be brought out of the situation, and that's where legislation needs more teeth in terms of separation of parents and children when parents are not rearing them in the direction that they really should go. There needs to be more legislation to give government the power to take the children up and put them in a better situation. So that's the first one. The second one is the need for another facility, so we don't have hardened criminal and petty what was so-called petty criminals in the same institution. So I don't really, there's no need to worry much to that one. And then the third one is the serious rehabilitation program. I don't know if we have the concept of a parole officer in Barbados. We see it a lot on television in the North American situation, where when people leave prison, they have to report every particular set of time, if it's weekly, monthly, whatever, and they have to get a job. They have to get they probably sometimes up to with a partner or something to stay. But every time they're supposed to meet with this person and have a report done and maintain a certain status quo to save them going back into the prison situation. So these are things that I suggest. I think that could make a difference in the penal system in Barbados. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, before you go, a follow-up question. You spoke of separating parent and child in certain circumstances. In Barbados, we had in recent history issues with precisely that in terms of misconduct by adults reported and substantiated at Barrows, which was a facility intended to do just that. What would be your solution to address that circumstance where you have removed the child from parent, but the environment in which you're placed is also less than wholesome?
Stiff penalties. I think that one of the things that I learned as a teacher is that I become the we used to call it, when it was the other system, it was the property department. And I think, and I believe that children in children's homes are actually called wards of the Commonwealth. So once that you must say with the Kong, or in our case now is the president, I think that stiff penalties need to be not just in place but enforced.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Strickland, have you resolved the issue?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Good evening to you, Aurora, and the panel and the listening audience. There are two things that I would want to look at, and it took a while for us to be where we are today. And I go back to a statement made by Reverend Rufus Blooms at the dedication of the St. Saviour's Anglican Church, which was over 30 some more years ago. At that dedication, he stated that the answer for Barbados today is the Sunday school. I believe it was either the Old Year's message or the New Year's message of 2022. The President, in her address to the nation, spoke about the Sunday school and the role of the Sunday school. I think it was earlier this year, the member of parliament for the city who was involved in crime, I read an article in the Sunday Sun where he spoke to the issue of Sunday school and vacation Bible school. Now, they said give me a child until they're, I think, 10, and we have that child for the rest of our lives. When I look at the Sunday school ministry across Barbados, because it is one area as a church leader that I'm pretty passionate. I see that the Sunday school ministry has fallen apart, and vacation Bible school in itself has almost died. In that, and the challenge is not, for me, the biggest challenge is not parents not sending their children to Sunday school, because when I look back, we would have said parents forced their children to go to Sunday school. Then we came to a point where parents ask their children if they want to go to Sunday school. But we're at a point now where we have a generation of parents who never went to Sunday school. So they know nothing about Sunday school. Now, when that child is not exposed to the gospel of Jesus Christ at a very tender age, it means that when you speak to that child, to that young man, not child now, a young man, his concept of right and wrong is very twisted. Because in our society, we have made evil to look good, and we've made good to look evil. So that I think that one of the biggest problems now is that churches are having difficulty either both recruiting Sunday school teachers and as a church leader, I know that there will be those that might not, what I'm saying may be incorrect. But you see, many years ago, the Anglican religion, they would have had their church services on mornings, early mornings, but then they had their Sunday school in the evening. Evangelicals, we would have had Sunday school at 10, and we would have had our worship at 11. But over the last how many years, many evangelicals, which constitute a large portion of churches in Barbados, have moved their church services up to 8 and 9, and therefore they place the Sunday school afterwards. Now, if I take a scenario whereby I have children, I have to rush them to school Monday to Friday. On Sunday mornings, if I'm to go to church for 8 o'clock and Sunday school is going to be at 10, it means I have to rush my children to church with me at 8. Or I leave them at home with the hope that they will get up, get dressed, and be ready for 10 o'clock when church is finished or whatever else. And therefore, churches are struggling, seriously struggling, and COVID was not a blessing to the whole idea, to have children in Sunday school. So if you look at a lot of our church services, just look at the ones who are being Zoomed, there's a stark absence of children in the sanctuary. Parents are coming to church and leaving the children at home. So this is an area that I believe that the church has to face, it has to wake up and recognize that it has dropped the ball to some extent, to a large extent. The jury is out on that. But the fact is that, and I remember my wife worked at a guest house, and there were some tourists that were there on one occasion, and they said, what we miss most about Barbados was coming to Barbados and seeing children dressed and going to Sunday school on Sunday mornings. That is very absent now. The second area that I would want to address will be that of the vocation Bible school. Now, vocation Bible schools can be a bit expensive to undertake and to manage. We've been having vocation Bible school for the last almost 40 years. And I'm speaking about only 3 years that we did not have vocation Bible school. So I'm speaking from experience of what it entails. This year and last year, we were able to get meals from the school meal center. And put in perspective the fact that we would normally have 3 weeks. We could only have 2 this year because of a lack of teachers. But one particular year, we were asked to partner with the summer camp program, whereby they needed additional location in our parish of St. Lucie. So they asked us to partner with them, whereby they paid our camp workers, and we kept Vacation Bible School for the entire summer school. Now, the summer school program in Barbados is not the most popular undertaking, because the parents are scared to send children to summer camp, because the students are up to age 16, I believe. The camp workers start at age 18. So you see a 18-year-old young lady supervising a 16-year-old young man. You see the difficulty. My suggestion would be to involve more churches which already have Vacation Bible School programs in and being able to finance the workers. Yes, because in that year we were offered some craft, we were offered cleaning materials and so forth, and there were one teacher for every 10 students. And I'm saying that during the summer holidays, without more guidance being given to a good block of the generation of young persons, I think that can be done to the benefit of our country. So that I know that some churches, unfortunately, it's difficult trusting them. I'm not going to be frank. I'm not going to be. I'm going to be frank with you, but sufficient that I believe that with vetting and responsibility and accountability, it can work. The last area that I would want to address would be, and the person speaking just before highlighted to it a bit. Now, in our school system, teachers, principals are struggling. I believe that there needs to be a partnership between churches, organizations, whereby individuals are able to volunteer, say half an hour a week to a particular school. So that I'm not just talking about prayers. I'm speaking about coming in and doing a half an hour session on a particular topic where they're supervised, they're monitored, and whatever else. It would give teachers also a little break. There are experiences that we are able to bring. Now, I attempted this some years ago with a particular secondary school. I will not call the name. And the red tape and frustration was so much that I abandoned it. I'm not saying that I should be allowed to walk in, but I'm saying that you have children who are being suspended. If a child is being suspended and if a child behaves badly and you suspend that child, the times when you are doing the child a favor. On the other hand, if these students are kept at school and maybe a retired teacher who's willing to volunteer, a church leader who's willing to volunteer, can spend some time with that child, helping them to know what they are worth and so forth, I think it can change the mindset. And if properly managed, I'm speaking about outside of over political control involvement, I think it can work, and I believe that it can change, because I saw where our community, which was very riddled with drugs many years, was transformed to a large extent through the work of our school and our Vacation Bible School. I really I want to commend this commission. I hope it wouldn't just be another exercise, and that I would have the opportunity where there is a town hall meeting to be able to come maybe and address also. So I pray God's blessings on the commission and for the work that they are doing, and I look forward to seeing changes working together in our country. Thanks.
Thank you. Before you move to some questions for you. First of all, I want to thank you for being frank about the church's role in its own, I don't want to say demise, but certainly diminution in society. You said that they dropped the ball and they have difficulty in terms of trust. What is the church doing to repair its own image in society?
Two things. I don't know. Our church is not a member of the Baptist Evangelical Association. Neither is it a member of the Baptist, the other one. Can't remember the name, but out of the two, okay, Baptist Christian Council. Now, because churches, there's so many churches in Barbados that are, I was just singular, for lack of a better term, they're not associated with a structured council. Now, so that there's, in my opinion, again, I will be criticized, but you have to examine and ask the question if what I'm saying is true. In that there are a lot of Lone Rangers seeking their own glory, their own whatever else. We have this Operation Decession in Barbados. Okay, now Operation Decession started many years ago, and each of the parishes had Operation Decession. It fell to only one parish, the parish of St. Lucie, still having Operation Decession, which is a grouping of denominations coming together once a month for prayer and whatever else. St. Peter rejoined, and then St. Lucie was able to help St. Peter to rejoin, and then all of the parishes basically had a resurgence operation session. As I speak now, I don't know how many parishes outside of St. Lucie and St. Peter are actually functioning because the churches find difficulty across denominational lines to come together. What I found that has worked in St. Lucie is the cooperation that we've had, and yes, the leader that we have, but I think the cooperation that we have had, which we've developed a culture which we meet basically every month. So that's one side of it. But this on the issue of trust, unfortunately, there's the notion out there that we are in it for dollars and cents, and therefore persons shy away from as they hear the word church because the image that comes up is that of money. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying that there's certain situations that do exist at present that you'll have to work, or what needs to be done to overcome both of those.
Okay, so the church has some homework then. They need to find a way to fix themselves so that they become more attractive to members of society if they are to be a part of the crime fighting mission. I want to make a comment though about your stress on Sunday school. Barbados now is a highly multicultural society, and not only do we have churches, we have mosques, we have synagogues, we have the Rastafari community, we have those who are agnostic, and we even have some who don't believe in God at all. And the crime fighting mission has got to be one that encompasses all of them, because in society we have to learn to be tolerant of how other people think. There are some things that are not negotiable in terms of what the parameters of good behavior are, usually things that we are looking to structure as we find approaches to address crime. But we cannot do that without also appreciating and respecting that there are many different viewpoints and we have to meet people where they're at. So yes, Sunday school will have a role to play, but it is not that we're going to be recommending the enforcement of Sunday school or involvement in church when there are other options that also press morality as a fundamental in their organizations.
I thank you very, very much for what you said, because because I'm associated with the Sunday school. You have Sabbath school, you have and you find that some of the other denominations they get their children up more so sometimes than we do. You know what I'm saying? So I'm looking from the perspective of the ones that I am more familiar with. That I'm more not familiar, that I'm more engaged with. But I'm saying that we must get our children in that environment, rather a moral environment, rather they belong to any other. Because if you don't do it at this impressionable age, at that impressionable age, then we're gonna have difficulty down the road. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Adrian? Okay, so Adrian's hand up, but I am not. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And good evening to all. Good evening to all the rest of the chairpersons, Madam Chair. I just heard what Mr. Strickland would have said, and to some extent, I agree to some extent of what he said, but I can't really say though that the church on the whole has dropped the ball, right? Because there's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I think that mantra that has gone through the village to some regard, because the village seems to be only caring about themselves, not about the child. Now, as far as the church is concerned, yes, Sunday school, we all know that Sunday school would have played a pivotal role in all of our lives. The ones that had the whole time of bringing. But the youngsters nowadays now, yes, you can hardly see half of them coming to church, especially in Pentecostal church that I belong to. And to say totally that the church has dropped the ball, I don't know, that's a really fair statement, Mr. Strickland, to say that, because I do recognize that some churches need to do more, be more vocal, and be more involved in finding solutions. But I think that the church, there's a lot of right there. What I can tell you, from my walk out from the church I belong to, and they go out there to do crusades. They have active members of the church in the different communities, especially in those, as they say, the ghettos and stuff like that there, and they still have an active prison fellowship. They go and talk to these young men and young women and try somehow to get through to them and let them know that there's only one way out, and that's our Lord and Savior. You know, there's no other way, right? So amidst all the nice programs and stuff like that, I think that the church has not dropped the ball. Also, before I go off, I heard you mention about something about keeping the children, that you're doing them a favor when you send them home in all detention. I don't really agree with that, taking them out of school. Because yes, you can do that to a child that's been rude and disrespectful to the teachers or what have you. And I don't know if the chair has something to say about this, but I think that to some extent will do more harm than doing good. Because when you send them home, what's going to happen when they go home? Because some of the parents don't pay them no money, so the parents caught up in their own thing, right? And you know, I think that would be more detrimental to them sending them home. Because they're going to, you know, as the old type saying goes, devil will find work for other hands to do. So, you know, I have a little problem with that. I understand where you're coming from, but I have a little problem with that. I don't know if the chair wishes to express her view or open up that or part that a little more, because I think that can be looked at in a deeper sense. That's my take on it.
Thank you, Adrian. Since you called on me, I am very equal to saying that I don't actually agree with you. I am one who believes that the church has done itself harm, and that any outreach that has to happen now has to move from the church. The disaffection, I do believe, has a lot to do, and this is a personal perspective now, the disaffection with church has a lot to do with its positioning on some issues that society has moved away from. And whilst I am not calling on the church to sacrifice what it believes and holds dear, I do call on the church to understand what Christian understanding is, where you are not called upon to agree with a person, but to treat them with respect. And I think that the church's hardline position has driven people away, and that they're the ones who are going to have to make that step towards society, as opposed to society making a step towards them. There's not going to be a position, I hope, where we become a religious state and we are pressing people towards church. I would not like to see Barbados get to that point, but we do have to be extracting the morality, and for those for whom the church is a solution, then we do need to have the church to fix itself for that. And when I say the church, I am including religious organizations in their entirety. My apologies for that. But that first move is going to have to come from the church. In relation to schools, I am awaiting the input from the teaching fraternity. I don't want to cross those bounds yet. I will only say what I said at the beginning, and that is that we have already taken note that the situation that we had before was most inadequate. We have dismantled that. We have not put anything in place to replace what we do with children who do require the intervention because they have collided with the criminal justice system. But hopefully that is coming shortly. So I will await the input from the teaching fraternity before I speak on that particular issue.
Ma'am, sorry, don't mean to interject, ma'am. Do forgive me, Madam Chair. I understand what you're saying, but you can't only focus on one group. That was something that come to me just now. You know, I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying it seems that a lot of people in general seems to be beating down on the churches a lot. But for me, I think that we can't focus on one group. I agree with the majority of what you've just said, but it seems to some regard in wider circles that they seem to be hammering on one group. Church needs to do this. Yes, the church needs to do more than it's been doing. I'm not saying that. I don't want anybody out there to get me wrong, right? I'm not saying that, but I think it takes a conundrum, not just one group of people, man. And on the point that the guy, was his name, Dwayne Goddard, made earlier, and he was asking about the boot camps, I would have given that, I would have asked about that solution pertaining to also the parole officers and follow up in our first stanza when we had our first town hall. So yes, the church plays a pivotal role. I agree with Val Holt, but it takes all of us, not just one group. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you too. Now, I want to take a different course. I've been asking for raised hands, but I want to put someone on the spot now. I recognize a name amongst us, and I know where he is at, and he is in a location where security cameras are almost ubiquitous. He lives in the UK, and anyone who has visited recently will know that approximately every 150 meters there's a camera, especially in the larger cities. And if you haven't visited, but like me, you like to watch the crime watch shows, you will know the very important role that they use CCTV footage for. So, Mr. Connell, Anderson Connell, if you can speak to us, please, and give us a perspective from the UK on cameras in public spaces.
All right, good evening, and warm welcome to everybody from the UK, even though it's a little bit chilly today. But first of all, I'd like to say well done to you, to Berla and the team, for actually hosting this particular commission to enable all of the big persons like ourselves and abroad to contribute. Before I actually talk about cameras, I wanted to make a comment first of all on what I've been hearing. And as someone who's been very much involved in community activities over the years, for quite a number of years, I've seen many reports and seen many things going on about crime and trying to reduce crime in society. And what sticks in my brain quite often is that you hear the kind of link between the development of the brain the poverty of the individual. It goes here about the ability to earn quick wealth, and it's also the lessening of the value of life. So in other words, the value of life is worth less than what the criminal is trying to achieve, i.e., whether it be robbing you or whatever the case may be. And the other thing obviously is around basically, feeling excluded. And I wanted to really highlight those as some of the key areas that are always attributed to the development of crime and the increase of crime. It is said that the brain is not fully developed until you're about 25, 26 years old. So it says that crime, particularly amongst young people, will tend to happen when you are less than 25 years old, and therefore you don't fully make rash decisions. And the first thing you do is you draw a weapon of some description. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that in terms of poverty, they're saying that any increase in cost of living brings a significant increase in crime. So if you have a 10% increase in cost of living, and some of the statistics has been flashed around over the years, it says that will increase crime enormously, particularly amongst the young. Because that then puts them into not only the poverty area, but into the area of being excluded. So they want to be like they don't want to be like their peers. They want to be able to own quickly. So sometimes the only way to earn and to own it is not through working, but through crime. And so those are some of the areas that I just wanted to point out that we need to be considering. The other thing before I get to the cameras, there has been some extensive work done in London. And as you know, that London has a big problem with crime, particularly around the use of knives and so on, knife crime. And the Mayor of London has developed what's known as the London Crime Reduction Unit Team. And basically that crime reduction unit team is set up by the Mayor to try to bring together individuals from across various spectrums, whether it be the schooling, whether it be education, whether it be the services of the police service, whether it be the teaching service, wherever. But it also includes the young people in that. And this is all about looking at ways and how they can actually help to reduce crime. So it's about trying to get young people to also help them to set the agenda. So perhaps we need to also consider that in Barbados when you're moving forward, is don't exclude our young people in terms of the decision making, particularly around violence and crime. Include them and help them to set the agenda. In terms of the cameras, which I will not come to quickly, is you're absolutely right, Verna. There are cameras everywhere you go. And the cameras themselves play a vital role in being able to identify some of the trends and perpetrations of crime taking place. I'm sorry to say, I do not believe that cameras alone will stop crime. Because if a young person or anyone is in poverty and they want to go out and, for example, I don't know how to feed myself today, I don't know how to feed my family today, cameras are not going to be the last thing on their mind. They're still going to go and commit the crime because they're in poverty, they want to be fed. For the young person who thinks that he wants the next pair of trainers, Nike trainers, or the most expensive trainers, he's not going to think about cameras. All he's thinking is, I want those trainers. So I'm not so sure that the cameras will be to solve all the crime. It will help reduce it, but not necessarily solve it. I think the cameras have to go hand in hand with other things that you are doing in society around actually helping to manage crime. And I think commissions like these can help develop some of those particular scenarios of what we can look to work with moving forward. But one good thing I can say about the cameras is that, and having been involved in something recently where a knife's been used to seriously injure a young man, actually at the point of basically he almost being a fatality, is that the cameras were able to clearly identify how that happened, and so, but that camera was actually in the venue where the young man was actually present and where the young man was stabbed. But the cameras were also able to follow the perpetrator of the crime as they left the venue and made their way and traveled across the community to go elsewhere. So yes, the cameras has that role to play, but cameras alone by themselves cannot stop crime. They will help to limit crime, but crime is always inevitable. But it can be, if you like, not managed, but it can be restricted in such a way with the help of cameras. But don't see cameras as a solution for the crime. I think that's, and the last thing I will say, what worries me in Barbados, because Barbados is only 166 square miles, and therefore everybody knows everybody. And when you go to something about 34, 35 murders in about 8 months, that's a hell of a lot of murders, homicides in in a short space of time on a small island. The problem with that is it starts to develop, and that will get out into the wider world. Barbados's main income revenue is tourism. And what we find is that if we can't arrest that tourism income can even hit further. So we just need to be mindful that don't just spend a lot of time talking. We now need to do action and get things in place. And I would say start at the schools, start at the community centres, and start to engage with the young people, because I think those are the ones who will help you to solve the crime. I hope that's okay, and there's some useful things in that.
Yes, I am very grateful for your contribution, especially since you've given us another point of reference that we will most definitely research and see how it can fit. What I do know is that comparatively, the UK has a fairly good handle on firearm management. However, knife crime is where they have their issue, and knife crime amongst the youth. So for me, I am seeing that parallel. It may not be the same type of weapon, but the same type of issue that they're facing in terms of trying to get a handle on what seems to be a runaway crime solution. So I want to thank you very, very much for giving us that other perspective. And if there's anyone from anywhere else in the diaspora that wishes to participate, I want to encourage you. We do wish to hear from you. And in case you are shy and you don't want to give your commentary live, my telephone number is 262-7289. It is not private. You can feel free to use it, and it has WhatsApp attached. You can either call or message with your contributions. I've also been taking note of some of the contributions made in the chat, and my phone has also been going off with some person sending me their messages directly, because not everybody is comfortable speaking up in front of others, and that is quite fine. So I just want to share a few with you that I have seen. There's one person who's been very, very active in the online chat directly here. So I'm certain that you're following along. So I will not speak to all of the comments, but one point that she made which stood out for me was in opposition to having children removed from the classroom. And I think this is something that we have to consider carefully. We've spoken about removing children from their parents, but also removing them from the classroom. And perhaps what we need to be looking at is how we can find management solutions that still allow learning to continue whilst diverting behaviors in a way that we could have the transformation of our young people and that intervention at the earliest opportunity, but also to ensure that their education continues apace. I'm also attracted, Anderson, to your comments on cost of living. I know there is one person who has said, and I won't out him, that cost of living has nothing to do with crime. that is an honesty issue. So it's more of a morality issue. But the reality is that we're seeing here in Barbados, and the Chief Magistrate pointed it out recently, that there is an uptick in shoplifting. There is an uptick in shoplifting by elderly persons, and the items are not random. They tend to be food items. And perhaps this is something that we have to be mindful of. The cost of living will impact crime, whether or not you consider it to be a morality issue. The reality is that there is direct correlation between the cost of living and crime stats in this country, and certainly in other countries as well. The studies bear that out. Our prolific commenter in the chat is saying the cost of living will impact crime. So she too is agreeing in relation to that. And thank you very, very much for your comments in the chat. We have been taking note of them. I received via WhatsApp now. This is looking more at the criminal justice system and how the failures of the criminal justice system are impacting on our crime situation. And the comment being made is crime will continue to escalate because the penalties do not fit the crime. We cannot hide, but we can amend some of the current laws to bring consequences to behavior. For instance, in relation to persons found with unlicensed firearms, they should have automatic sentences. No, I just want to, I read that one in particular because I wanted just to make you aware of some developments in the law, which indicate that you can't have mandatory sentencing anymore. The judge's right to sentence is to be undisturbed except for what we call capital murder. There are two types of murder, capital and non-capital. And we do have the death penalty. It remains on the books. It has not been practiced. I don't think I'm going wrong when I say in my adult lifetime, I certainly can't recall a single instance. But I want to have some conversation as to how our criminal justice system, the state of our criminal justice system, is impacting on the instance of crime and what we can do in order to fix that issue. I notice a few lawyers are in our midst, so if they want to make their contributions on this point, I would be happy to hear them. I'm seeing a comment in the chat in relation to the UK situation where shoplifting has been for resale. And then I'm going to raise this, but I don't know that there's much we can do about this one in this forum, and that is what is happening with our constitution. I don't know if that is a lacuna that is impacting on crime, but it definitely is something that needs to be addressed, unfortunately not under our remit. What I will do in the meantime, whilst you're thinking about this, I'll share a few of my suggestions, and I do this in full knowledge that tomorrow and Tuesday there will be a symposium, as there is the intention to bring some order to the criminal justice system by way of some procedural rules. The two biggest issues to my mind in the criminal justice system, which all boil down to one, and that is delay. But the two biggest issues is that there are not enough lawyers who are in the criminal justice, who are at the criminal justice bar, I beg your pardon. So you will find that one attorney will have several matters coming up on a particular day, but because we haven't found a way to be in more than one place at a time, something has to adjourn. The other issue is that we continue to have archaic modes of conducting our business, and so physical files, literal paper files, have to pass from department to department, from the police to the DPP to the prosecutor's office, transfer over to the High Court. Actual paper. I finished a matter about 2 years ago where the transcript was over 2,000 pages. Now, we have to find another way to do this, and I think we need to find it quickly. It is part of the backlog. I know we're going to have all the other conversations about who's at fault for matters taking long, but for me, those two issues, if you can get a handle on finding a way to attract more lawyers to the criminal bar and finding technological interventions, which should not be too hard because we're way behind. We're not even behind the 8 ball. I don't even think we're on that table anymore. The world has moved away from paper and we are holding on to it for dear life. If it is that we can find ways to bring ourselves kicking and screaming into the 21st century where that is concerned, then I think we will go a long way to demonstrating that we have a nimble system that can respond, because those response times, it's like dealing with a toddler. You have to intervene when the misbehavior happens and not the next day. The toddler will have no idea what you're talking about. And we're in a similar situation with the criminal justice system where the lag time is causing a drag, and we see not over, I beg your pardon, that was just another comment that was coming in via WhatsApp, and we need to find ways and means to push it forward so that we can have our criminal justice system responding well.
In the power, but you see right there the ability to get back inside on the cut. He's very, very agile as well.
This is someone who is saying that we're searching far and wide. I'm paraphrasing, for solutions to a problem that did not raise its head overnight but has been festering for a long time. I quite agree with this statement, but I do wish to say that we cannot sit on it. It has to be that we deal with the matter now. The longer that we wait, and it doesn't help to simply say, oh, we've had this for a while. What helps is finding solutions, and that is what we're working towards, and what is the business of this commission on crime. I see a comment saying that there may be grants to help with this, and I do hope that we can find where they are, because I will admit that what we are considering will call for cash injections of a significant amount, but hopefully with some benefits in not just the long term, but also in the short and the medium term. We're going to wrap up shortly. I'm seeing one more hand. Adrian. Go ahead, Adrian.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Madam Chair. I much enjoyed what Brother Connell would have said, and just what you have just said. It is a law. The wheels of justice are too slow. But my question to you, ma'am, as one of our top lawyers, one of them in the country, don't you think that in order to move away from the paperwork and get on with what's going on in this new technological age of AI and what have you, that instead of holding on to the old faithful way of paperwork, you're going for the prosecutor to get their act in order, that they can be some kind of way to, I don't know, get the minds of the powers that be to revert more to the technological age in a more expedient fashion, so that you have a person that is on remand. Let's just say, for example, say I watched something in the crime story, actual thing, where this guy was on remand for here in Spring for the last 2.5 years, and his case only was called in 2017, and he was on remand for that massive length of time. Here in Barbados, we have people that who would have been on remand for a good number of years, and now the case getting called, and as a result of that, when the case is called, man, you have the lawyer, as you rightly say, takes on other cases. Sometimes they go into other jurisdictions and they don't come back. How many times you would have a person come into court, the case no call, yes, but then the judge asks them, so where's your lawyer? Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard from him or her, and you know, they're lost. So therefore, they either remain in the system, they go back because they may not be able, for one reason or another, to afford another lawyer, because they're currently still trying to pay the existing one that they have no communications with. Papers get lost between the cracks, as you say. So if we're going to fight this crime situation, I think the judicial system, in my opinion, needs a complete overhaul. Not just more judges. We've seen more judges. We've seen more of this fancy building, but it is still at zero. Number one, I'm sorry to say, you may or may not agree with me, ma'am, but that is how it is. The ones that are already in the system, quote unquote, ma'am, they're getting the heavy end of the stick, especially ones that commit the lesser crimes. So really be the first degree murder, second degree murder, or murder with intent. You know, you have to be able to mitigate in between those and see the time that was spent. Then obviously, if you go before the court, the judge will drop those percentages and drop it more and more, and then there we go. We never have nothing solved. You know, lack of personnel in the courts, as you would know. So I think that they need to really look at it from a different point of view, rather than what's currently happening, because it's not really working. I'm sorry to say, the backlog is still there. It may be there for another couple of years. I would hope not, but from there you see things going in the system. You know, I don't know what you can say to that, man. I wait to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I just want to highlight, I spoke about the use of technology from on the side of the state, but a comment pointed out, and quite rightly so, that the attorneys also need to embrace the use of technology more. And really and truly, we need it to be pervasive throughout the system if we are to get a handle on what is happening. What I have here is another comment that came via WhatsApp. Poverty and the destruction of the family unit contribute to deviance more than most realize. Most criminals, in inverted commas, and their parents see crime as the only way to advance out of poverty. We need to address the root cause, and I will say that should be root causes. And yes, that is a conversation that we also need to have, those root causes of crime. We dealt with them at our last town hall meeting. We will meet again on Sunday in a different forum again, and hopefully we can expand the conversation at that time. At this point, I want to give over to Shaquani Hunt, and she will give the vote of thanks.
Good night, everyone. For some persons who may now be logging on, I just want to thank everybody who came on early, those who were waiting in the YouTube channel, because I know we did start a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties, But when we did start, the presentation was extremely wonderful. But I know for myself, definitely, I did take some notes because we had some excellent points coming over. And just like what Verna said, we're looking forward to see you out in your numbers, those of you who are in Barbados, and those of you who will be online. We might have a link up and ready for next week's presentation, but definitely I want to encourage everybody to come out, because the more consistent and committed we stay to this, the better the outcome will be. And from last week's presentation, from this week's presentation, I can say that there is an improvement and an increase in numbers, and the presentations are excellent. So I want to thank everybody again for coming on this evening. I don't know if persons are seeing in the chat, but I posted some information that I want you to be reminded of. I want you to follow us on Facebook at Barbados Opposition and at DLP Barbados, and on Instagram the handles are Barbados Opposition and DLP.BDS. Again, just reading some comments in the chat where people are saying they're going to see us next week. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody, and everybody have a good night. And for those of you who may not know, I hope you will be tuning on to the Marcia Week show, as I know that they will also be tackling some very important topics tonight as well.
Thank you very much.
To you. In case
Thank you very much to all of you. And those of you who are not home, please travel safely.